So welcome back friends to the lecture series on conservation of medicinal plants, and in the previous lecture we discussed about the genesis of the importance of the conservation of medicinal plants and how the WHO decided to frame the guidelines for the conservation. Now coming on to the guidelines that are prescribed by WHO for conservation of medicinal plants. So these guidelines have four major aspects. First one is the basic studies, which include to study traditional knowledge on the use of plants in healthcare. And this aspect says that we should gather the information in which various plants, which plants are used in different traditional systems of medicine, or the traditional knowledge about the plants for their therapeutic purposes, so that they can be incorporated into the healthcare systems. To identify the medicinal plants, outline their distribution and assess their abundance. So under basic studies, we should gather the information that how you can identify the medicinal plant, what are the characters of a particular medicinal plant. So in other words, in order to remove any kind of ambiguity regarding the identification of the medicinal plant, we should collect that kind of data. Then we should also outline their distribution, where these medicinal plant species are distributed naturally, where they are, in which areas they are growing naturally. Then to assess their abundance, what is the population of that particular species in the areas where it is distributed, whether that particular medicinal species growing widely have abundance of population and therefore it is not of major concern with regard to its conservation status, or the species of the medicinal plant, that particular medicinal plant, have a very limited population in the areas where it is distributed, so it can be considered as an endangered or vulnerable towards endangered or critically endangered. So all this kind of information should be collected under basic studies. Then the second aspect of the guidelines is utilization. So this aspect states that we should utilize whatever information we have gathered as per the first aspect. So wherever possible, to cultivate the medicinal plant as the source of the supply. So by utilizing the knowledge in the first aspect, we can analyze that which species are in abundance, which species have a very limited distribution, which medicinal plant species have a limited population. So after analyzing the data, we can decide which plant species are to be cultivated for the industrial supply. Then ensure sustainable collection from wild. This is an important point because a lot of stress on the natural resources is due to non-sustainable collection. Apart from the over-exploitation, non-sustainable collection is the major source of major point of concern. So after analyzing the data or the information which we have gathered, we can always pinpoint, we can always identify the plant species that has to be collected from the wild sources. And once you have identified those plant species, you can always develop certain sustainable methods of their collection from their wild sources, thereby conserving those medicinal plants. And the third point is to improve techniques for harvesting, storage and production. So again, as we discussed in the previous lecture series regarding the factors that affect of the medicinal plants during and post cultivation, harvesting was one of the factors, storage was another, and the production, how the plant products are produced. So all these factors, if you can improve upon the techniques of harvesting, that is the collection of the plants, storage where they are stored, you can improve the condition of the warehouses where the plant drugs are stored. You can always improve the environmental condition of the warehouse, that is by reducing the moisture, by taking care of all the pests that can come into that warehouse. So taking care of all such things, you can always improve the storage conditions of the medicinal plants, and also the cultivation or the production of the medicinal products or the plants. Then the third aspect is of the conservation of medicinal plants. So once you have gathered the information, then you utilize that information in deciding which plant species are to be cultivated, how you can improve the collection or the harvesting practices, how you can improve the storage conditions or the cultivation of those medicinal plants. Once that has been decided, you are left with the species that you want to allow to grow in the natural habitat. And for those species, then you design the conservation strategies. And it's not only the species which are not cultivated, you can always apply these strategies on the species which are also under the cultivation. Now, conservation can be, or the methods which can be used for conserving the medicinal plant species can be broadly categorized into in situ conservation methods and the ex situ conservation methods. So, to conserve population of medicinal plant species in natural habitats, this falls under the in situ methods of conservation. And to conserve population of medicinal plant species by certain other methods like cryopreservation is one method, though it is not so popular, or by developing botanical parks, that comes under the ex situ conservation, wherein you are conserving a particular plant species in an area where it does not grow naturally. You are taking care of that plant species by manipulating the conditions and allowing that species to grow. Such kind of practices come under the ex situ methods of conservation. And the fourth aspect and the most important aspect is the communication and cooperation, because WHO when they were framing these guidelines, they gathered the information, they framed the guideline, and they come to a conclusion that only these strategies, only these guidelines cannot be completely effective if there is no participation of the local people or the people of the area where you want to conserve a particular plant species. So without the public support, we cannot be we cannot be able to achieve our goal of conserving the medicinal plant species. So the fourth aspect is the communication and cooperation, in which they emphasize to build public support for the conservation of medicinal plant through communication and cooperation. So in communication, they have to make the people sensitize about the importance of the medicinal plants. They have to make people sensitize or sensitive towards the utilization of medicinal plants, and so on and so forth. So first one is to communicate with the people, to make them understand the importance of the medicinal plant species, and then ask for their cooperation, because once the people are convinced, then they will willfully cooperate in such kind of practices. Now we are going to discuss in detail each and every aspect of these guidelines. So first aspect was the basic studies, that is to gather the information, to study traditional knowledge on the use of plants in the healthcare system. So for this, each country should identify and support one or more institutions to plan, coordinate and implement ethnobotanical surveys. So the government agencies or the ministries should identify certain institutes which can carry out certain surveys, ethnobotanical surveys, wherein the people travel to different areas and they gather knowledge about the plants that have been used traditionally for different disorders in that particular area. Thereby, they can prepare a database, and that database can be catalogued area-wise or the medicinal plant species-wise, wherein all the information that this particular plant species is used for these disorders in these areas. Or we can also catalog as per the area, like in this area, these are the plants that are being used traditionally by the ethnical people, by the tribal people for different disorders. So this kind of database should be prepared by the institutes that are designated by the ministry. Second is, the selected institutions should implement a nationwide program of surveys on the use of the plant for medicinal purpose in the traditional societies. So once that ethnobotanical survey is over, side by side the people should always should also gather the knowledge regarding the medicinal uses of those species by the traditional societies, because India is such a diverse country. They have different cultures, they have different societies throughout the country. So every society, every culture has its own traditional knowledge, and they use that knowledge in their in fulfilling their healthcare need by using different plants. So we will find when the knowledge is put together, you will find that a particular plant is used by different cultures across the country for different medicinal values. So the major aim of those institute should design certain programs, should design certain surveys wherein they gather all the information about different plant species for their medicinal value or for their therapeutical value. Then the third aspect is the data on the ethnobotany should be catalogued and analyzed, but only disseminated in such a way that the communities providing the data would receive benefit from any commercial use of this information. So this is quite important, because as I told you that medicinal plants can act as a potential source for newer drug moieties or newer drugs. Now when we are gathering data from the traditional societies, from ethnic societies, or from the tribal people who are mainly relying on the use of medicinal plants to fulfill their healthcare needs, we may come across certain newer plants about which the modern science is ignorant. The modern science is ignorant about the new use of that particular plant. They may be knowing the plant species, but they may be ignorant about the use of that particular plant species for which it is being utilized by those tribal people or the ethnical people. So once they come across that new use, the modern science can always validate that use by using modern scientific methodologies. And perhaps we may land on a new molecule from that particular plant which can act as a new potent drug for a particular disorder. And obviously when we will find a new molecule from that plant, that molecule will be treated as a drug in the market. But here is the crux of this aspect of the guidelines, that whatever commercial benefit you are gaining from that molecule which you land upon by getting the knowledge from those ethnical or the tribal people, that commercial benefit should always be shared with those bearer of that particular knowledge, those tribal people, those ethnical people. Because in the recent past, it has been observed that people visit these ethnic people or the tribal people, scientific people, they visit these tribal people and they gather information from those people. And they start working on those plants in their laboratories, and once they find the usefulness of that plant, they try to commercialize that product without sharing any kind of benefit with those ethnic or the tribal people. So this was an intellectual property conflict. So that is why now again the intellectual property guidelines are there, which we will discuss in the later series. Then these guidelines state that whatever commercial benefit you achieve from the knowledge, by exploiting that knowledge, traditional knowledge, you should always share those commercial benefits with the bearer of that knowledge. So this is what these guidelines also state, that whatever information, traditional knowledge or ethnobotanical knowledge we gain from those traditional societies or ethnic people or tribal people, we should always share the commercial benefit with those people. Then next is, the Ministry of Health should incorporate proven traditional remedies into national programs of primary healthcare. So again, this kind of information will only be possible when whole of that data is collected from different areas, from different traditional societies. So once that knowledge is gathered in a database and is analyzed, from that database or from that knowledge, we can always select certain traditional remedies which have proven their worth over the period of time. Because these traditional remedies are used by people since ages, from generation to generation. And that data shows that these traditional remedies could be safer for human use directly. And therefore, such remedies can be directly incorporated into national programs of primary healthcare, so that such remedies can be worked upon by using modern scientific technologies, and we can further improve these remedies. The next point is traditional healthcare practitioners should constitute themselves into national bodies. This is another important aspect because till now the traditional health practices are not considered as a part of the healthcare system of the national bodies. But gradually over the say last few years, we have seen a change in, or we have seen the shift in the paradigm. Now the traditional healthcare practitioners are also incorporated into the national bodies, wherein they can give suggestions regarding the incorporation of the remedies, traditional remedies or the traditional medicines into the healthcare system, thereby promoting the traditional healthcare system or the traditional systems of medicine, and they can also help in achieving or fulfilling the goal of the governments to provide the primary healthcare facilities to each and every citizen of their country. Then the second aspect under the basic study is to identify the medicinal plants, outline their distribution and assess their abundance. So as I told you that whatever data is being gathered under this aspect, it is mainly done to remove any kind of ambiguity regarding the identification of the medicinal plant. And we discussed that India is a diverse country. There are so many languages spoken in our country. So each medicinal plant has a different vernacular or the local name which is different in each language. So it's a very Herculean task to gather all that information and put that information into a single database. So for plant identification, herbarium specimens are prepared. Now in herbarium specimens, what we do is we take a plant specimen which contain almost all part of that particular plant species. Leaves are there, flowers are there, if possible fruits are also there, and if possible roots are also there. So we dry that plant specimen and press it on a cardboard sheet. So whenever a sample of a fresh material comes to an organization or a herbarium, then what they will do is they will take out the herbarium specimen of that particular sample, and they will compare the characters of the sample in question with the characters on the specimen on the herbarium sheet. And if the characters match, then the identity of the sample is established. Another major advantage of herbarium specimens or the herbarium sheets is that you can store large number of plant specimens in a smaller place. Now when you prepare a herbarium specimen or a herbarium sheet, that sheet should be adequately labeled. It should have a unique reference number bearing the collector's name and a code number on it. So that forms the unique reference of that particular herbarium sheet. So I repeat, it includes the collector's name, the person who has collected it, and number code on that particular sheet. Now when that herbarium sheet is prepared, in order to confirm the identity, certain microscopic studies are also performed on that sample. So whatever microscopic slides are prepared of that sample, in order to confirm its identity, in order to get more information about that sample, such slides should also bear the same unique reference number. Because there are certain plants which are morphologically quite similar and it's very difficult to differentiate between the two species on the basis of morphology. So in order to confirm the identity of such samples, microscopy is another technique which is quite useful. So microscopic information should also be stored in the form of slides that should bear the same unique reference number that has been mentioned on the herbarium sheets. Then the label that has been put upon the herbarium sheets should also include full details of the locality and the habitat from where that sample is collected, as well as those characters of the plant which cannot be seen in the dried specimen, such as height of the trees. So if you have collected the sample of a tree, then obviously you cannot paste whole tree on a herbarium sheet. So in order to get other information about the tree, other characters like height of the tree, the diameter of the stem, right? So all such characters or all such data should also be put on the label of the herbarium sheet. Color of the flowers, because once the specimen is dried, the original color of the flowers is lost. So in order to confirm, in order to facilitate the identification of the sample, the original color of the flower should also be mentioned on the label of the herbarium sheets. The specimen should be identified with scientific name of the plant, and yes, this scientific name should conform with the standards that are given by the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. Because India being a diverse country, lot of vernacular name of the same plant species are there. This is one scenario. In the second scenario, different plants can be considered under a single name. So lot of confusion can arise if we start naming the plants with our own system, and that is why, since today is a global world, there should be a uniform naming system that is uniform across the globe. So therefore specific guidelines have been given by International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, wherein they suggest that how you can give a name to the plant and what kind of a scientific name should be given to that particular plant. So all those plants, all those specimens of the herbarium sheets, they should bear the proper scientific name of that particular plant species or the plant sample, and that naming should conform with the international standards. To ensure consistency of names, it is recommended that the national herbarium or the equivalent organization in a particular country should prepare a list of standard names, which would then be followed in legislation and in the literature. So again, this is the same what we have discussed, that in order to bring the consistency in naming of the plant, we should develop certain list of the names, certain list of the plants with their standard names, which then becomes the regulatory naming of those plants. Vernacular names are useful and important, but are not always easy to correlate with the scientific names. So again, we have different languages in our country, we have different cultures in our country, and wherever you go in our country, you will find a different vernacular name, different name in a different regional language for the same plant species. So the databases which are to be prepared, they should include the common names, the vernacular names, the names which are given in different regional languages. Say for example, this particular plant is known in Hindi by this name, in Sanskrit by this, in Punjabi by this name, in Marathi by this name. So covering all the regional languages, all the regional dialects, we should incorporate their common names or the vernacular name along with the scientific names. So therefore, each country should have a national herbarium with a botanical library. So in order to achieve this goal of gathering all the information about the identity of the plant, about their scientific naming, about their common vernacular naming, so each country should have a national herbarium wherein all the herbarium specimens are placed, and those herbarium specimens should conform the guidelines, international guidelines as well as the national guidelines set up by the international communities as well as the country in question. Along with national herbarium, there should be a botanical library, and this botanical library should have all the textual reference regarding the identification of that plant. They should also have a cadre of well-trained botanists in the herbarium so that they can analyze the sample with the herbarium sheets, compare the samples with the herbarium sheets, and can provide the true identity of the sample which have come to the National Herbarium for identification. So friends, this was the first part of the first aspect of the guidelines. So in the next lecture, I'll be moving on to the next aspect, wherein the Botanical Institute should make a catalogue of the plant species used for medicinal purposes. And what are the requirements of making that catalogue, how those catalogues can be used upon, we are going to discuss in our next lecture. Thank you.